Welcome to another episode of This Was Supposed to Be Easy.
We've had these conversations on at least 1,000 car rides and thought it might be time for other people to join us. This is Cheryl.
And my name's Amy. We are here today with Dr. Cheryl Geisthardt, an expert in stress, coping, and resilience, and the professor of child development. She is here today to talk with us about friendship and support during times of trauma and life's roller coaster moments. Those quintessential times when life gets hard. Cheryl, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And I am wondering if you might be willing just to kind of start us right off and share your story with us.
Okay. Well, first, again, thanks for having me. I'm interested to see where this all goes, but I do have a background in stress, coping, and resilience, but I'm here more to talk about my personal experience. Almost 3 years ago, my youngest child, who was 18 at the time, was studying abroad in Germany. She was doing a extra year of high school to gain that cross-cultural experience. She was super excited about it. About 3 months in, long story short, she ended up being diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive cancer that flipped our worlds completely upside down. When you send your child away, or when they decide to go away, because this was 100% her idea, you worry about a lot of things, but cancer wasn't on that list at all. And we went from living as an empty nest couple, my husband and I, for the first time, to immediate crisis. I flew to Germany when she was going to have surgery before we knew it was cancer. Everything happened really quick there. It was still kind of the tail end of COVID. We had to get medically flown back, and then our lives just went crazy, trying to find where she needed to be treated in the US. Her cancer is extraordinarily rare, something that they really can't even quite explain completely. So it was a roller coaster, I guess. But the friendship part, that's what I'm here to talk about, right? So
all of it. All of it
is really important, but the friendship. So we're going on 3 years of this, and it really has been a lot of roller coaster riding. Times where we thought they got it and it was good, and times where it was back with a vengeance. And right now we're at a kind of moderate level. It's unfortunately not gone, but it's under control. So we're trying some new things. But through it all, I don't know how I would have made it without the amazing people that I'm blessed to have in my life. You two among those people, which we're so grateful for. And the way that they supported us throughout it. I also have to say that people always ask how they can help, and that is amazing. And we are so very appreciative, but sometimes we don't know the answer to that. So some of the best things that have come out of that are people who just do, like, just show up. And that's actually a book I once read, Just Show Up. And I've been trying to, in the calmer moments, figure out what all of this means for how I'm supposed to be in the world and how I'm supposed to move forward, both professionally, but even more so personally. How do I stand and support children and families going through situations like this, or a whole host of trauma experiences that people unfortunately go through in their life?
So you covered a lot kind of in that really short time. And Cheryl and I know about your relationship and your family's situation a little bit more. And so we, want to be sensitive as we, ask some of these questions. And so only share what you're comfortable sharing. But with that, how have people shown up for you? You mentioned that, really you don't feel like you could have done some of these things without different friends and family and in support of everything. So how have people shown up for you?
Oh gosh, in so many ways. But if I think back to the very beginning, it was a faculty member. There's a lot of end of semester craziness going on. I was finishing up classes. I was very grateful that I had people back in my department, amazing people who stepped up and helped me get through without too much added stress, hopefully, for those students. But then we're coming back, and my daughter is an extrovert galore. She really likes to connect with people and be with people, but she was so isolated during her time in Germany. And we came back, and it was still COVID, and she was in chemo, and she couldn't be around people so much. But all of you, oh my gosh, the welcome home that she got, the people who came into our house and decorated the entire house with signs and positive notes and up and down our driveway, and then arranged a drive-by where many of our friends and community members and people that Olivia cared about and we all cared about came by just to safely say, that they were thinking about her and our family. Of course, some of that traditional kind of bringing of food, which was amazingly helpful. And just reaching out and asking how we were doing. And then creative things like my wonderful friends and colleagues who know that we're dealing with a lot and have arranged for us to have some housekeeping, which has been immensely helpful as we navigate all of this. But I think I've said this to both of you before. It's been interesting to see my closest friends stepped up, not surprisingly, very quickly and in a whole host of ways. But then a lot of people that maybe had gone through tough times, not necessarily a child with cancer, came out of the woodwork. People I knew that were acquaintances that really were like, wow, they were there. They were like checking in daily and not in an intrusive way, but more in a like, we're so thinking about you and sending cards and just letting us know that they were truly there.
Cheryl, earlier when we were talking a little bit about this, I remember hearing you say a little bit about how many decisions you had to make at that point in time and the decision fatigue that existed. And I feel like you had some nuggets that all of us could take to heart and use as we try to be there to support people going through tough times. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And I will fully admit that this has been a learning experience for me as well. And I think back about I don't want to say mistakes because everyone means well, but things that I wish I had known that maybe I would have done for my friends or people in my life. So I keep that all. And I know everybody's coming from a place of care and love. And we appreciate that more than I can ever express. But it is a time of decision fatigue. And so a very common question, very well meaning, is what can we do for you? What can we do for you? And we're like, we have no freaking clue what you can do for us. Like we're losing our minds just trying to get through the day. So some things I've read and some things people did were really just offer us simple choices instead of saying, what can we do? Like, we'd like to bring you dinner. What day would be good? Or would your family prefer chicken or burgers? And also it would have been okay to say, sorry, that's not a good time. But at least it didn't say like, do you want us to bring you dinner? Because that's another thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well,
we're trained to say no, right? Like to
right.
not accept help. So often.
And especially when you're in a field and a personality who likes to be the one is used to trying to doing.
Yeah.
And so accepting the help is challenging, and people did really kind things like providing DoorDash gift cards from when we were at the hospital. And so that, we could feed ourselves when we were down there without too much extra thought, and get gift cards for gas. I mean, those were very kind things, but I do think just showing up matters a lot, and understanding that when people are in serious crisis, they might not always respond right away. And I know my best friends, all of you, wouldn't hold that against me, because sometimes you are overwhelmed with people well-meaning and you can't get to all those notes right away, or they slide by because you happen to be meeting with the doctor when that message came and it got shoved to the bottom. And it's never out of, at least for me, and I would argue for so many people, out of disrespect or not appreciating it. Those messages still mean a lot. It's just extending grace that, you might not get that thank you card that normally I would send if we weren't in a different situation, or at least you won't get it right away. Right. So I think, just trying to figure out how you can help as best you can, or at least offering specific things. And if it doesn't resonate, not taking offense, of course, and just saying, okay, that was, we'd like to do this for you, instead of what can we do? Because honestly, that's a really hard question and I've talked with other families. You're just like deer in headlights at that moment. You're like, I don't even know what I need right now.
Right.
So,
sometimes, and I think this happened a little bit in your situation too, sometimes having that point person that, like, if you're only having to answer questions to one person, and that another, whether it be family member or friend, can kind of navigate, especially early on. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like those types of things are helpful or more frustrating in the moment? Like, would you talk about that?
I think that, first of all, it's always very individual specific, right? So what works for us I'm not going to guarantee works for others, but I do think that can be helpful for sure. And we did do some of that, having friends that we knew would spread the word and let people know what's going on. But I also wouldn't want people to not feel like they couldn't reach out directly either, especially if it's just to say we're thinking about you, or rather than what's going on, right? That kind of more just, and I guess now that I've unfortunately not, I mean, I'm very fortunate to have gotten to know some amazing people through this experience, people that you wish you knew for different reasons. But I try to kind of reach out and just not be intrusive, but just be, we're thinking about you. You know, we're going to be at the clinic on this day, and I know you're impatient. Is it okay to visit you? If not, it's totally fine. Like just making sure people know that, you know, it's okay to say no. It's so I'm getting all over the place. I'm sorry.
But I love what you said, because I am that person who often when someone's in crisis, I really have this internal debate of I don't know what to do. I don't want to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And I just love that simple tip of sending a text that says, thinking about you. Like that's so easy to do. And at the same time, lets a person know that they're remembered and they're being thought about.
And I also think it does open the door for engagement, because I've received more than one of those where, you know, from a friend or even like not even a super close friend, but the timing just happened to be like, I have a lot on my mind. And so I could then engage, right? I could have somebody at that moment to talk to. And other times, no, we're just super, super busy, but we still appreciate it more than we can ever say. That people were thinking about you or doing things, and people would do things like leave stuff on the porch, you know, and it just say later on, or sometimes say, because we were spending a lot of time at the hospital, will someone be home sometime today? Yes. Okay. We're putting cookies on the porch, you know, like it was just really thoughtful. And I think too, because we're going on to 3 years, it gets hard because it's going on so long. And the initial, like everyone's there at the beginning. And it's been amazing to see the people who've kind of stuck with us through it all, like, and been through the whole roller coaster ride with us. And then there's some people who, you know, kind of come in and out, and that's okay too. It's amazing, the support. I don't know what we would do without it. And I also knew from a research perspective that social support is key to getting through some of these tough situations successfully. And I just more and more have to figure out, not just for my friends in my network, but also people who might have less social support, you know, seeing families in the oncology unit, on the oncology unit, struggling and maybe having less social support, just trying to figure out how to step up for them when I'm able. If that makes sense.
It certainly does. And so, since you brought up kind of your professional background that goes along with this too, and I know in situations you wear kind of dual hats, and it maybe make you think of some practical ways that you can look at some of your research as well. What about that would be helpful for our listeners to know? Like thinking about those, maybe those thoughts when it comes to the research. I know you've done a lot of work in ACEs. And
Adverse childhood experiences,
yes,
in case you haven't.
Yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely. At those adverse childhood experiences, and we know that they're prevalent and they do happen more often than we think. So, could you share a little bit about that in general?
It has been a very interesting experience when I am able to kind of step back when things are kind of calm and going okay for my daughter, to kind of step back and put that researcher hat on. And I'm still figuring out what that means long term for what I'm doing. But as Amy and Cheryl mentioned, adverse childhood experiences, there's a large body of research about the long-term effect on people having experienced trauma during childhood has lifelong consequences for many people in terms of physical health and mental health. And medical trauma itself, like the experience of going through some of the tough stuff these kids are going through, and also for adults, can leave its toll as well. And even though we are at a wonderful, wonderful facility that has a lot of resources and it's doing a fabulous job, there's still so many things that are outside of the medical staff's control. For example, our lack of policies that support families in times of stress. I literally sat at the infusion center while a mom got fired from her job, a low income single mom, because their child needed to be admitted immediately. And they called in, and it had been going on for a little while, and we have no protections as a country. And again, we're lucky that my husband and I both have jobs that have been very supportive and worked with us as we've gone through this, but not everybody is that lucky.
Mm-hmm.
It's been like a policy is a big thing. The struggles that people have had with insurance and this is not like, you know, elective surgery that they're trying to wait for word about, but insurance companies like refusing medications that kids need or adults, doesn't matter. But I'm witnessing it because even though my daughter's cancer, she was 18, it's a pediatric cancer. I guess I should have said that earlier. So she is treated at a children's hospital, which for her is great because, I mean, if she has to have cancer, she loves being with all the children. So we've had that experience of witnessing all these families with children from babies all the way through mid-20s going through these experiences. So I'm still trying to figure out in the long run what this is going to mean for my research. I have lots of ideas moving around in my brain related to cancer or just life-threatening and chronic illnesses, which I'd already done some work in previously, but not related specific to some of these cancer specific, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about, we had mentioned those relationships that you had, and I know we briefly touched on the relationships that have maybe been newer or come in and out of your life. How have you made connections with other families, and what has that been like for you?
Yeah, because we've been at this for so long and because we have some amazing people at the place where my daughter is being treated who have helped connect us. So, some people you just end up meeting because at the beginning there was long periods of hospitalization. And so you get to know the other parents and families there. There's a fabulous parent advocate who like intentionally connected like my daughter with some other younger children actually to play games and do other things. And then you get to know those families, or you're always in the infusion center because you're on the same kind of schedule. So you get to know families. And that has been a good source of support. And we do help one another. But it also has been interesting from a researcher perspective to try to figure out like, how do we get information out about how to support not just friends, but just even from a policy perspective, like what do we do to make this better in this like truly awful experience that so many of the families I now know are experiencing or have experienced. Yeah, it's a lot.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking as you share more about connections and the different ways that you've connected, I know that you have engaged with one or two, I don't know if it's more organizations that have provided experiences for your daughter and other patients.
Sure.
And I'm just thinking, sometimes there are people out there who are like, well, what could I do? And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of that.
Yeah, that's great. And in fact, a quick note, I thought you were going a different direction, but so there are like it's just that social support is really important. So I'll get to those organizations in a minute. But the first thing that came to my mind is some of the support kind of mom to mom or parent to parent connection. So there's a wonderful organization called Momcology that has a fabulous website or Facebook page where people communicate. I've gotten to know a number of families that way. So I know other parents of young adults with pediatric cancers that are all over the country, which has been really interesting. So from a parent perspective, that's been pretty cool and very helpful. And you kind of get wrapped.
That's social media. I mean,
It is.
Yeah.
It's really great. And they do a lot of awareness raising as a organization too. And they do provide, and I haven't been able to go to one yet, but they provide some face-to-face mom retreats, and they're doing more with dads now too. It started as Momcology, but dads are welcome as well. But from my daughter's perspective, she was right at that cusp of being 18. So technically an adult, but still, not really fully an adult. And she'll be the first to admit that. So we had a Michigan-based organization that a social worker connected our daughter with, and she was able to she didn't qualify for Make-A-Wish because that ends, you have to be under 18. But this organization included 18-year-olds. So she got Rainbow Connections. That's a Michigan-based organization. And many states have organizations based in their states that provide some things to look forward to. So they helped her build a fabulous wish. And our whole family got to go 2 years ago during Christmas time to New York City. My daughter's a big Broadway musical kind of gal, and she wanted to go to see the Rockettes and see the Christmas trees. And it was fabulous. And it really was a true break from kind of the horrors of what had been happening. She was still in the middle of treatment, but at that point, she was able to just kind of enjoy life for, 4 or 5 days, which was amazing. And then this is just, I think this organization right now that then she was doing pretty well. And then she had a relapse. Actually, she had a couple of relapses. So the family advocate connected her with this newer organization, which was a bunch of wonderful guys who during COVID got together and, they were more socializing and having fun in a safe space in a pole barn or something like that. And they were talking about, well, how can they make a difference in the world? And they decided to focus on young adults and those that kind of fall between the cracks. They're not quite adults yet, if you will. And they, don't qualify for some of the child services. And they decided to do kind of a similar kind of a wish idea. And they do surprise wishes and a lot based in Michigan. So they have a lot of connections with places. So the warriors, that's what they call them, get to decide whether they want it to be a surprise or not. And my daughter decided to have it a surprise. And they have this wonderful, like fabulous, age appropriate 21-year-old experience. She's 21 now with her and her friends in Detroit and a musical and getting to meet people and go to these fancy places and be taken everywhere. And it was just a day and an overnight. So a weekend basically. And it was just really a break again from kind of all the chaos and some time to
she got to be 21.
She did. Yeah. She got to be 21 and spend time with her friends. And those things are really, really important. I've learned that there are so many really cool organizations, often started by people whose lives have been impacted by pediatric cancer in this particular case. But actually the ShedNet group, that wasn't the case. They just decided on their own that this is the group they wanted to target and support. There are a lot of really cool organizations that are really doing things. And so we need to figure out a little bit better way to get information out. Usually it's by the social worker. We are really blessed at the place that we go for treatment that they have a fabulous parent advocate who just does so much to help. And I would now very much call her a friend of mine because she's just been so amazing. And not just for my daughter, but for so many children she's just so aware of what's going on and she can connect them with lots of different opportunities that can just at least for a slight amount of time help them feel a little more normal and a little less stress, right? At least for a short period of time. So those have been great. And there's things like I sometimes think about how do we our friend group, once we get past this, what do we focus on and how do we engage? And we have a department where I work that really tries to figure out ways to give back and to contribute. But this might be one of those ways at some point. But again, a lot of this is I'm still in the thick of it. So I haven't had it all figured out yet.
So as we're kind of wrapping up, I am wondering what is something like a key takeaway that you would want somebody to know or a listener to know who is experiencing either maybe from one end, they are supporting somebody else who is going through a traumatic life event, or maybe they're experiencing a traumatic life event themselves, or in your situation, a mom of a child. What would you like them to know about relationships and resilience and friendships and things like that?
Well, I think for me, it comes down to this kind of concept of grace for yourself for not being perfect and none of us are, right? And this experience has made me even look back on previous experiences where I was hesitant, maybe, I don't want to be in the way. I don't want to overwhelm them. But now wishing I had done things a little different, giving myself grace for that. And now I know what I know and hopefully will do things different in the future. I plan to do things different. I will do things different. So extending grace for yourself and extending grace for yourself when you're not able to respond as quickly as you might want, or, send out a million thank yous and all that kind of stuff. And I've learned to recognize that the people who are closest to me totally get that and they don't have that expectation. And if I make someone annoyed because I didn't get them a thank you, then I'm sorry, but I'm not going to let that and that's not the case in general. But I also think that from my perspective, it's easier said than done, but trying to just kind of go, okay, I need to reach out and when I can. And I need to utilize those support networks and not feel bad about it. Right. And recognize that in our lives, all of our lives, it won't all be the same kinds of challenging life experiences you go through, but we all will have them. And so, I hope that I have at least done some paying forward already. And I know that when we're through this, that, I will continue to do my best to pay it forward again. And in the meantime, try to support people who are going through things like, we're going through as best I can. One other thing I will say is that one thing that really has been very cool is some of the connections that we've had have been through specific organizations or through professionals, but some of it has been a little more informal. Like we had a visiting nurse who just came a couple times because of some things that needed to happen at home. And she happened to know another 20-something young woman who was going through cancer, who was feeling isolated and alone. This was relatively early on in our journey before my daughter knew many other people. And she just asked if it would be okay to share their contact information, and they became good friends. Actually, that's happened a couple of times along the way. So not being afraid. I mean, obviously you have to respect people and whether they want that or not, but being open to that too.
To be the connector.
Yeah, to being the connector, right? I mean, with permission, obviously, and respecting people's what they want or what they don't want. And everyone's different. That's the other thing. Recognizing like what I'm saying, some people might be listening to this, going through a similar thing and going, that's not how I would like it. But again, I go back to that experience of grace. I try to just think everybody is doing the best that they can. But I would lean in rather than lean away. As I read this book called Just Show Up, like show up, whatever that means, whether that's just sending an occasional thinking about you or saying, hey, I'm going to leave something on your porch. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant, but it just, makes you feel like people are thinking about you and care. And some of it's really practically very helpful. So, yeah.
I hesitate to ask, but I'm wondering if through all of this, have you found something for yourself to fuel you back up or offer a little love?
I will say I appreciate the way that you worded that, because one of the things that many parents in my situation or similar situations will kind of get like a little frustrated with when people are like, you have to take care of yourself. We know that, like, right.
Doesn't make it easier.
Right. And there are times when that, sometimes you're like, yes, I know that. And other times you're like, there's no freaking way that's happening right now. Like we're in full crisis mode. And so, we've been at this unfortunately for quite a while. And I did learn that, I need to take care of myself in order to take care of my child as much as I can. And it depends on the week, quite honestly, and what's going on. But for me, like I need to do a better job than I was early on of just moving my body some. It's way, it's better for me. It's who I am as a person. I need to move, doing things like yoga, getting out for walks, especially if I can walk with another person, friend or another parent going through a similar situation, trying to make those opportunities when you can, when it's, sometimes they won't happen because there really is too much going on at that moment. But when there is, just trying to do some self-care.
Did I hear something about treading water?
That's funny. That's great. Several of our mutual friends, thanks to another podcast that a friend of ours was listening to this summer, was talking about the benefits of treading water. And so this summer, things were kind of moderate in terms of treatment. We were at the hospital some, but we also did have some downtimes, which was nice. So we had some great friends that we would tread water at a community pool that we use. And it was fabulous. I would never do that for an hour by myself because that would be immensely boring. But with friends, an hour would go by like that because you're talking and having fun and you're moving and you're in the sunshine. For me, that sunshine adds to my day too. So
a little bit of medicine.
Yeah, it really is. And everyone's different. Everyone's self-care is different. And again, I'm not claiming to be perfect at it at all, but I really have tried to pay attention to when there are times when it's possible, making sure to get out there and connect and go to lunch and have an acai bowl with your good friends, things like that. So.
Nice.
Awesome.
So I think it's time to say thanks for tuning in to This Was Supposed to Be Easy. Remember, the best stories are the ones we live, and Please join us next time as we uncover more tales and thoughts that just might change your world while we navigate the things that we didn't expect to be so hard. Stay curious, stay connected, keep wondering.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. This episode was recorded near the end of 2024. Since then, Cheryl's daughter Olivia has passed away. We want to dedicate this episode to Olivia, who was a bright light in the world.
She's already deeply missed by family and friends. Olivia was an outgoing, kind, compassionate, creative, and energetic person who loved meeting new people and making new friends. She always saw the good in people.
Even in her darkest days, Olivia brought immense joy into the lives of those lucky enough to know her, and her smile brightened the world around her. She loved her family and friends, travel, music, dance, theater, crafting, and her pets.
She was also passionate about social justice and making the world a better place for all. Thank you for all that you gave.